Are you tired of being the screen police? The constant negotiation, nagging, and fights over screen time? Girl, it's so exhausting. Two frustrated ADHD parents who experience the problem firsthand have created a solution that actually works. Screen Coach is a time management app that rewards good habits. Kids can earn their screen time by doing activities set by you, chores, homework, even brushing their teeth. You can allocate times for kids to access certain apps only or block all apps. Once it's set up, you can relax. There's no sneaky workarounds. Endorsed by psychologists, Screen Coach enforces those routines that help ADHD kids and parents thrive. They offer a free 30-day trial, and because you're part of the Chaos fam, you can even get a 5% discount after the trial. You can head to myscreencoach.com/chaos or click the link in the description and start building healthy habits for life. If you're trying to pull your kids away from screens without triggering a full-blown household uprising, I have something that actually works in my house. My son and I are obsessed with the games from Taco Cat Games. We especially love their very popular Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. I am not kidding when I say every family we've given it to comes back saying the same thing. This game is chaos in the best possible way. It's ridiculously easy to learn, the rounds are super fast, and within about 10 minutes, your living room turns into a laugh until you cannot breathe, slap the table competition. And for ADHD brains, it's perfect. Quick feedback, constant engagement, lots of movement, all the things that keep kids actually interested, which is exactly why I love it for our Screens campaign. Games like this create those tiny moments of connection that reset everyone's brain after a long day of school, homework, and way too much dang screen time. So if you're looking for a 10-minute family reset that actually works, check them out at tacocatgames.com or check them out in the show notes, because sometimes the best way to compete with screens is with doing something even more fun. If you've ever looked at your kid glued to a screen and thought, is this helping their brain or quietly hijacking it? This episode is about to change the way you see everything. Today we're sitting down with Dr. Michael Rich, better known as the Mediatrician. A pediatrician, researcher, and literal pioneer in the science of how screens shape our kids' brains, behavior, sleep, attention, all of it. He's the founder of the Digital Wellness Lab at Boston Children's Hospital, and he spent decades studying what happens when developing brains, especially ADHD brains, collide with the world designed to keep them scrolling, tapping, and coming back for more. And here's the part no one is talking about loudly enough. This is not about too much screen time. This is about how digital environments are built in ways that can amplify impulsivity, hijack attention, and make emotional regulation 10 times harder for our kids. But before you spiral into guilt or start drafting dramatic, we're throwing out every device in this house speeches, breathe. Because Dr. Rich isn't doing the shame thing. He does strategy. In this episode, we're breaking down what the research actually says, what matters way more than screen time limits, and how ADHD families can move from constant power struggles to something that actually feels like control. Not perfect, and not Pinterest, but doable. So if you're tired of guessing, second guessing, and Googling at 2 a.m. wondering if you're messing this thing up, you're in the right place. Grab your emotional support iced coffee and let's welcome Dr. Rich to the mic. Welcome to Chaos Caffeine, the ADHD parenting podcast where you do not need a degree to understand your kid. I'm Danielle, mom in the trenches who spent years obsessing over how to do this better, so you don't have to learn everything the hard way like I did. Each week, I bring on experts who actually make sense. And then if you want the real story, come hang out with me on Patreon where I break down how it all played out in my house. What worked, what flopped, and what I'm still side-eyeing. Thanks for being here. Dr. Rich, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Thank you.
For our listeners who may not know you just yet, do you mind telling us a little bit about you?
I'm Michael Rich. I'm most importantly a parent, a pediatrician. I'm a child health researcher, and I'm the director of the Digital Wellness Lab, which really examining with medical and public health research the effects, positive and negative, of screen use on kids' physical, social, and mental health. I'm known as the Mediatrician.
I love that. I seen that whenever I was researching you. Do you mind telling our listeners what it means to be the mediatrician?
I spent my wicked youth in the film industry as a filmmaker and a screenwriter before I had a midlife crisis and went to medical school. And in medicine, I have become a pediatrician and was really coming up at the time when people were most concerned about television on kids' physical health, mostly around obesity, but also around issues like aggression, and have been studying the effects of the screens kids use and how they use them on their health ever since. There's a strong move toward believing it's all bad, but it's not all bad. This is part of the environment in which kids are growing up and living and needing to communicate, to learn, to connect with each other. And so the Wellness Lab is really around figuring out positives, the negatives, and how we can move forward in ways that are informed and empowered to raise kids to be the best humans they can be.
I love that. So, not where I had planned on starting, but if you don't mind, could we dive into the
Okay.
positives? Because I know that parents often see it as a very negative situation or topic.
Well, the problem with seeing it as a negative situation or topic is that it doesn't go away, and
Mm.
it just ends with conflict with your children. But let's think about how we communicate and connect with each other these days. Um, there are many positives of this. I mean, we can have babies spend time with their grandparents on video chat. We can have children learning to read on Sesame Street. We can have children connecting with other children around the world from a very early age if they are using this in mindful and purposeful ways, and not simply doom scrolling.
Mm. So, you've seen 3 decades of shifts in how kids use screens outside of me being naive and not believing there are that many positive. What's the other myths that are still out there?
I think the biggest myth is that social media, smartphones, or screens in general are doing things to our kids. And we have to take a step back and realize it's what they do with them. It's important. In other words, instead of measuring screen time, which I would argue we can't even measure anymore because we don't use it the way we use television, where we turned it on, watched a show, and turned it. We are
Mm.
moving in and out of screens seamlessly all day long. And this is part of the environment that kids are living and growing up in. And we've got to approach it the same way we approach any environmental health issue, like the quality of the air, the quality of our water, and learn to use what we have in the ways that are as healthy as possible while still working to always improve that environment.
Mm.
But I think it really steps back from accountability when we say, oh, the smartphone did it to me or gaming did it to me. It's what I did with gaming. And really, the only issue with screen time now is not so much what we're exposed to, but what we're not doing because we're on screen, like not sleeping, like not having a conversation with our children, not having a sit down family meal where we decompress from the day and nourish each other both emotionally and physically.
Mm. I love that so much. So, one more question, and then we'll move on to the ADHD aspect of it. Can you tell us, outside of necessity, why saying no screens just won't cut it?
It won't work, quite simply. The kids will always have a workaround. Um, and I think that we need to understand that the way we help our kids to be digitally well is not by denying it to them, but by teaching them how to use these very powerful tools in ways that help them be healthier and smarter and kinder to each other. And one of the ways we do that is we observe what I call the three M's of digital wellness. The first being to model the behavior for your kids that you hope they will imitate and be like you. They listen to 100%. I'm sorry, they listen to 1% of what we say, 100% of what we do. So if we are staring at our smartphone while telling them to turn off Grand Theft Auto, to them, that's the height of hypocrisy. So we have to model the behavior that we want to see in them. The second thing is we want to mentor them in the use of these powerful tools. I've had parents tell me they dread the internet talk more than they dread the sex talk because correctly or incorrectly, they think they know something about sex, but they're sure their kid knows more than they do about the internet, and they don't like not being the expert. But to mentor them and approach it not with fear or guilt, but to approach it with curiosity. Learn that smartphone with your child. Learn social media with your child. And if it, as you learn it, if you feel that it is more risk than benefit, then explain to them why not to use it. Not in terms of it's better, don't do that, but in terms of this won't help you, this will harm you. And then the third, and this is the one that parents and kids push back against the hardest, is extend that mentorship, that curious sharing of the digital space into being able to monitor their online time and digital use, not to spy on them. And we have to tell them we respect them. We're going to preserve their privacy as much as they can. But we're also there to back them up if they end up in places that confuse them, upset them, scare them, or possibly could cause them risk or harm.
I am navigating that road currently. My kiddo is 10 and he has a modified version of YouTube where I can see what he's watching. I can block certain things. No communication, no chat options or comments, anything like that. But I think
Mhm.
one thing that has really slapped me in the face recently is that we have gifted our kids these very high-tech devices, and I don't think we're spending enough time teaching them that what they see may not be real, or what they see could be over exaggerated or completely just made up. And I think we've skipped that step before handing these devices over.
And it's not even that clean a binary thing. It's like we have to help them understand that everything they see has been created by someone and has been created by someone with a certain intent, whether it's to make them laugh or to make them behave a certain way or to make them love or hate certain groups of people, etc. I think that they have to understand that everything there has been created. It is not reality. And to think about why it was created, by whom it was created, what was excluded from that reality that they are painting, and to really think about whether what they are seeing squares with their experience of the world.
Mhm. Indeed. I think that even as a 40-year-old woman, sometimes I see my peers also not understanding that concept. So it can be extremely tricky to try to teach children the same thing.
Absolutely. No, and I think we have a generation coming up, interestingly enough, Gen Z, that actually is looking even at the millennials, certainly at their parents, and saying, we don't want to go there. And they're actually moving back toward analog experiences, toward IRL, in real life experiences, instead of diving in sort of blindly the way the generations before them have.
Yeah, that would be nice to see.
Mm. Well, we have to learn to listen to them and listen to each other in and purposeful ways, as opposed to just skating over the surface of whatever feeds and memes and pings we get.
Yeah.
have to recognize that our attention is of great value and we give it away to other people who then monetize it. Um, and we need to respect ourselves and each other enough to pay attention. And there's a reason we call it paying attention, like we're paying money, but we pay attention to that which will help us be stronger and more empathetic as opposed to just whatever catches our attention and grabs it.
Agreed. Dr. Rich, I think there's something different going on in my household and probably every household listening because it's an ADHD parenting podcast. I think my son
Uh-huh.
is using screens for regulation. So we're
Mhm.
navigating a very tricky walk of maybe using this device for a wind down after school, some regulation time. But instead of watching videos that serve no purpose and trying to learn something that we're interested in, for us, it's mainly sports. Can you tell us what is going on
Mhm.
in neurodivergent brains during screen use?
Uh, this is a really important question. This is really central to a lot of young people that I take care of who've gone down the rabbit hole of the internet, whether it be gaming or social media or short form videos. Um, this is a place of relative mastery for people who have attention deficits. Um, where they've spent the whole day in school feeling like I'm not following this, I'm not keeping up with it. And it's not just the classes, it's also even in the playground and conversations, interacting with people. Um, and so they come back to home, turn on a screen, and everything on there is engineered very carefully to keep grabbing their attention so they can relax and themselves because the things about kids who have attention deficits is that they are incredibly good at things like gaming because that distractibility, that vigilance is really adaptive and is great in a gaming environment, for example. And I think we have to recognize that that distractibility and hypervigilance is something that was passed down to us from our hunter-gatherer ancestors who crawled out of the cave in the morning in search of food and had not become someone else's food in order to get back home. And they passed these skills down that were very productive, very adaptive, generation after generation until the generation was told, sit down, shut up, and listen to the teacher. And it was maladaptive. So what hasn't changed is us. What has changed is the environment that we need to function in.
Ooh, that is so good. So your work treats digital media exposure almost like the environmental health issue. Can you break down for
Yeah.
ADHD families what's happening? Is screen exposure causing symptoms or exacerbating them?
It's actually relieving symptoms. This is why the kids are drawn to it. They feel in control. They feel masterful in an environment that is designed around continuously grabbing their attention. So um, they are drawn to it. And then, of course, because it is all set up to grab their attention, regardless of how well they are paying attention, um, it is something that does not then challenge them to pay attention. So I wouldn't say it's certainly not causing them, um, but it is possibly accelerating or amplifying the effects because they're not being challenged to move to a more attentive space.
Interesting. Like I said, my kiddo comes home and it's almost like he needs at least 10 to 15 minutes to wind down. I learned very quickly there is no coming home, unloading homework, and doing it right then. He needs that space. He needs that time for himself where he almost goes in his own little
Sure.
hole and then he comes out a different individual.
Well, I have a question for you. It's sometimes hard to get him off the screen after that.
Who, Dr. Rich? I don't know if we have time to go into that today.
No, because that's the real issue is um, they get into that environment where they feel really good, and many of what the things they do, whether it's watching a video or playing a game or in a social media exchange, it then sets up the situation where when the parent says it's time to move on to other things, they are in the middle of something. And when they're in the middle of something, then the conflict happens.
Can we talk about the quiet gaps screens have created? Our kids can build entire digital worlds, but struggle to read the room. And no, this isn't about demonizing screens. They're not evil, but they are passive. Social skills, executive functioning, those are not passive. They're built, practiced, strengthened. That's why I love social thinking. Because this isn't just be nice advice. It teaches kids how social communication actually works, how to notice what others are thinking, manage impulses, join conversations appropriately, and respond instead of react. And here's the part parents don't always realize. It also builds executive functioning, organization, flexible thinking, time management, problem solving. These are classroom survival skills, friendship skills, life skills. If screens have taken some of those practice reps, we can build them back intentionally. Check out social thinking in the show notes. And let's raise kids who can navigate people and not just platforms. If you're a parent in the neurodivergent world, you already know this. We read labels like it's our second job. We side-eye ingredients, we Google brands at midnight, and we're constantly looking for support options that feel intentional and not sketchy. That's one of the reasons so many families, including my own, trust Mary Ruth Organics. Their supplements come in easy-to-take liquid drops, which honestly matters when pills are a hard no. The flavors are kid-friendly, the formulas are vegan, Clean Label Project certified, and the company itself is a B Corp, which means they actually care about what goes into their products and how they operate. Mary Ruth's doesn't promise miracles, and neither do we. What they offer is thoughtfully made, high-quality supplements that fit into real family routines without added stress. If you're looking for a brand that prioritizes transparency, clean ingredients, and making supplements easier for kids and parents alike, Mary Ruth Organics is one worth checking out. Because supporting our kids starts with choosing products we actually feel good about giving them. Agreed. And throughout my 10 years of neurodivergent parenting, I have learned a few tricks. My friends laugh at me because I have a countdown that I say is 5 minutes, but it could be anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes as long as his brain is getting that countdown. I'm also very respectful if he is playing with friends because I understand social time is very important. So if he's playing with friends and we can put whatever I'm doing off for a little bit, I'll let him know, hey, mom's going to give you this space, but we may have a hard stop in 20 minutes. So we are navigating it pretty well, but sometimes, especially in the past, transition off of screens has been challenging.
Yeah, I mean, if that 5 minutes, which can be a little bit, malleable, is the notice for him to wrap it up to the completion of the game or the, end of a video that they're watching or whatever. And then that is helping teach him to self-regulate because he knows the clock is ticking, but it's not a hard stop at a certain time dictated by the clock. It is his desire to complete what is going on and set it aside for the next thing. And another trick you can have is have the next thing be something he really likes to do. Don't have it be, chores or homework or, going to bed. Have it be, crafts or, going out shooting hoops or something of that nature that is allowing him to have it be about starting something as opposed to stopping something.
I like that. I'm going to save that and use that for sure. So, Dr. Rich, tell me what the science says about screen content versus screen context. Which matters more for our kids with attention and regulation challenges?
Well, the evidence would show that it's not something is greater or lesser than, I mean, we have a strong tendency as humans to want, binary answers to what are ultimately complex and nuanced questions. So content, we should look at content as a learning tool. What, educational TV is all TV, right? They are learning. And so what they are learning is important. And it's not just, overt things like screen violence, or, drug use or things of that nature. It's also what behavior is acceptable and condoned by parents, society, etc. And so the content really matters in terms of what is being offered to them as the way of the world. And if what they see is, for example, that the way to get things done, the way to resolve conflict, for example, is through violence, through threat, through coercion, they will come to believe that that is the only way to do things. And so I think it's really important to understand that that content is, basically teaching them human behavior, teaching them culture. So that's part of the content, is not just what it's teaching overtly, but what it's teaching covertly in terms of what is acceptable. Context is equally important because context means when are you doing it? Context are you doing it? So, FaceTiming with your friends can be great in your downtime, but it's not great in the middle of the night or in church, So when you do things and how you do things, expectations you apply to it are really important. And one of the things that kids really struggle with is this idea that it is often assumed by their friends because they have FOMO, fear of missing out, that they will respond almost immediately to almost anything. So they are essentially on call 24/7, 365. And their friends will say, "Why didn't you respond to me in 5 minutes? You must not like me anymore," or come to those beliefs. And in fact, one of the things that I see in kids is beyond FOMO, I call faux blow, which is fear of being left out. Fear that if they're not on the social media chatter or the text or whatever, that they will not be part of what's going on in their lives. So this is really insidious because then they feel that every notification, every ping they get needs to be responded to very quickly, or they will be left out.
Ooh, I'm realizing that maybe I've done too much research for my own good because, as I said earlier, I think we're handing these devices to our children and we're not really giving them any etiquette on, not even phone etiquette. Don't call people before this time, don't call after this time. So my son's friends will call at 2 a.m. and we have already went over the do not disturb feature where we set a timer where our phones won't ring so that we don't interrupt our sleep. And that's just like another step along the way that I think parents are missing. We're not saying, like I said, don't call people at 6 a.m. Don't call people at 2 a.m. It's just a step that I think we're greatly missing there.
Well, I think it's actually more than a kit. It's about learning to use what is a power tool in ways that help us be the best we can be. I equate a smartphone to an automobile, which we help our kids learn to drive when they need it, when they can use it with responsibility and with respect for themselves and others. And even then, we sit white knuckled in the front seat with them while they drive. So it's a shared experience. And I think that we need to do that with smartphones as well. I think that many states have graduated driver's licenses. I think it would be great to have a graduated smartphone license in the sense of show that you can handle this, and then take the next step when you have shown you can handle this. So I think the other thing to do is, first of all, phones have no business being in the bedrooms at all. I encourage the whole family to charge their phones in the kitchen at night. I tell kids to tell all their friends that as of, say, 8 o'clock or whatever, they are offline because they have the meanest, strictest parents in town. Throw your parents under the bus, I tell them, because your parents don't care what your friends think of them. And in fact, that ends up giving them a sense of relief because they don't have to be on call. They don't have to answer that phone call. They can get sleep, or they can simply enjoy being with their family without constant interruptions from the outside world.
I love that, and I will definitely give them that permission to blame mean mom for all of the all of the silence
Right.
times.
Do you, do you know about the Mediatrician's Guide? Do you know about my book?
Yes,
You do, okay, because
yes.
all of that is in there, and it's all approached with, you know, optimism for the kids, desiring to be well, but it's also delivered with a lot of warmth and humor, which I think is really, really important to have a sense of humor because we're all flawed and we all make mistakes, and it's okay as long as we understand that and forgive each other and keep moving on.
Agreed. That is what I love about your approach is that, so as I said, I'm a 40-year-old woman, and just this past week I listened to a podcast on screens, and the two people that were on there were amazing, and they were experts in top of their field, and their advice was just take the screens away. And I don't think that is even an option in 2026. I don't think that we can do that.
No, and the kids would, evade it anyway. I think that that's again that binary response to a complex and nuanced situation. Um, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in schools that have banned, smartphones.
Yeah.
Um, Kids are incredibly inventive. And if we approach it as something bad, to be punished, kids will always look for ways to bend or break those rules and try to get away with it. Um, I know because I was that kid, right? And so it's more about saying, okay, this is part of your environment, this is part of your world, this is something that can do incredible things for you, but you also have to recognize that this opens the world to you, and the whole world is not all nice, and it's not all kind, and it's not all the kind of person you want to become. But I tell parents, instead of having screen media rules, because rules can be bent or broken, mom or dad gets upset with you, and you weather that and you move on. I tell them for the whole family to have expectations of each other rather than rules. That means the kids can have expectations of their parents as well. And one of the kind of subversive things I ask my patients when their parents are not in the room is, what could your parents do better? And almost always the first out of their mouth is, pay more attention to me.
Mhm.
So when your parent is staring at a smartphone, they're not available to you. They're not there with you. They are not present. And I think that we have to recognize how important our kids hold us to be, even when they're acting surly or nonverbal, or seem to be rejecting everything. Um, we are really important to them, and we need to be available to them and present for them. So I think it's really, really important for us to recognize that what we are doing is what they're going to emulate in the long run. And They have expectations to be present for them. We have expectations of them. And then when those expectations are not met, we're not angry the way we might if they broke a rule. We're disappointed. And that lingers. That's much more potent to a child than being angry about them breaking a rule.
Agreed. I told my kid that just the other day that my dad, his papa, all he had to do was give me the look, and I already felt the shame and
Oh yeah.
remorse and corrected behavior.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's much more and it's much more lasting. It sticks with you
Yeah.
um, when they're disappointed as opposed to angry.
So I have a question, and it's definitely a hot topic. And I know in the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing commercials around the safety measures that social media platforms are putting into place. And I think that is amazing. There's a lot of buzz about social media being harmful for children. Does the research support that for ADHD brains to be more sensitive to those types of platforms, or is it across the board?
It's across the board, and I do want to correct something that again that we have to realize that as Pogo, the old cartoon character, told us, we have met the enemy and he is us.
Hmm.
And that is that the problem is not that social media is doing stuff to us. That doesn't mean that there aren't really insidious algorithms that are designed to engage and keep you engaged. Um, what it does mean, though, is that we have choice. We have agency, and we need to teach our kids that they can go to social media, but they need to go to it to be authentic with each other. Um, Unfortunately, what's happened with social media is that we individuals, particularly kids, are using it the same way corporations do. We are using social media to market ourselves to the world, to show a great vacation I went on, or my dad's new sports car, or my hot new boyfriend. And people who go then to social media to seek connection, to seek being with other people, feel like, oh my God, everybody is happier than I am. Everybody is prettier than I am. Everybody is thinner than I am. And this upward social comparison can be really harmful in terms of body dysmorphia and eating disorder, et cetera. So I think we have to take a step back and think about what real connection with other humans is. We lost a lot when friend became a verb on Facebook.
Hmm.
And we then got into this competitive thing of friending more people than everybody else, et cetera. And so I think we have to take a step back and say, what true friendships do I have? And what are they like? Reality is that true friendships are there not even despite our limitations, but in many ways because of our limitations, because we complete each other, because we need each other and they need us. And that is so powerful in terms of any deep and sustaining relationship, as opposed to somebody who is gorgeous and wonderful in every possible way, which is ultimately kind of intimidating and demeaning.
Do you have any advice for parents in navigating that currently? My kid is not on social media, but I can imagine parents out there thinking, how do we introduce these platforms in a safe way?
I think we do it by sitting down next to them and learning them together.
Mm.
Learning them both to understand what engages our child, to be able to inject that executive function that they are not going to develop for another 10 or more years of impulse control and future thinking, the ability to, is this person truly who they present themselves as? Um, is this somebody you know in real life, or is this a stranger? Uh, they know now they're very sophisticated and they realize that people can Photoshop, people can use CGI to create almost anything. But they need to be conscious of the fact that that's out there. And I often say to parents who want to know when to give their kid a smartphone, and I will say, when you're able to talk to your child about pornography and hate sites and all of the things that are going to be one click away from them,
Mm.
and when you can enter into that dialogue with them so that when they stumble on these sites, as they will, because those sites are always trying to get into our kids' feed, um, that they come to you and say, this upset me, this confused me, this scared me, rather than, oh, I'm in trouble now. I've got to hide this from mom and dad. So we have to be very explicit about what's out there, um, and help them make the choices that are healthy for them, as opposed to going down the rabbit hole of the lowest common denominator, because the rabbit holes are all over the place.
Indeed. Dr. Rich, I would selfishly take up all of your time and question you all day, but I want to be very respectful of your time. Before I ask my last question, do you want to tell our listeners about the Digital Wellness Lab and your book?
Absolutely. Well, the Digital Wellness Lab is based at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And our goal is to understand digital wellness as an intentional act of um, grabbing our own physical, social, and mental health by our intentional use of the online space. What that means is learning to master it, to use it effectively, to connect with other people, to learn, to teach, to be part of a larger world, but also understanding that it is not a Swiss Army knife that does everything. It is a very specific tool that does certain things very well. And part of mastering it is knowing when to turn it off and do other things, including sleeping and eating. And guess what? Being bored. Why should we want to be bored? Because boredom is the crucible of creativity and imagination and innovation. We are so averse to boredom that we will fill it with whatever drivel happens to be online, rather than just take a moment and make shapes out of the clouds or think about what if. So I think that that's very important. I have been both researching and taking care of young people who have gotten in trouble in various ways with their screen use for more than 30 years. And I've put as much of that as I could into something called the Mediatrician's Guide, a joyful approach to raising healthy, smart, kind kids in a screen saturated world. We have to recognize that there are screens all around us. They're on our wrists, they're in our pockets. We need to learn to live well in both senses of that word with them, and not to be afraid of them, not to feel guilty that we've ruined our kids, but to move forward in this world in ways that are consistent with what we want for ourselves in terms of our health and wellness, but also in terms of our humanity.
I love that. And I have one additional question that is not my final question from what you just said. So
That's
what you're
okay.
what you're saying is if a parent gave a kid an iPad at 2 who was later diagnosed with ADHD, we did not blow it. We have a chance to turn it around.
Absolutely. Human beings are amazingly resilient. Um, we have kids who have been physically or sexually abused from very early in their lives, who, once they get out of that situation, who are able to become remarkable human beings. This is and always will be an ongoing work in progress. The process of growing up, but the process of parenting those who are growing up. So I think it's really important, as I say, to any point, take a look at things and say, is there something I can do better? And go to those 3 M's of digital wellness of model the behavior you want to see, mentor them in all of these devices and applications as they come into their lives, and monitor their use. Be present in their digital lives. They are spending as much or more than half of their waking hours in the digital space. We need to be there with them just as we need to be there in physical space. And here are the goodies you get if you observe those 3 M's, which are 2 more M's. One is that we master these tools, and that's using them effectively and purposefully, and using that, not using them just as purposefully. And while we cannot anymore measure our screen time, we can measure our non-screen time. We can put them down and do other things quite intentionally. And what that gives us ultimately is the ability to make memories. We don't make memories of the video games we play or the social media we bounce around on. We make memories of a walk in the woods with grandpa. We make memories of watching ants build an anthill. Those are the things that sustain us. The making of a meal together, and even the spilling of the spaghetti sauce all over the kitchen floor. Those are things we talk about for years after.
Indeed. Okay, so really, really last question. What do you think we're getting right about parenting in 2026?
We are using digital media with our children, co-viewing, discussing, making it part of their world, making it something that they have agency over and choice with, and showing them that it's not all good, but it's also not all bad. And they can be the kind of humans that they want to be and that we want them to be. And they can be happy and healthy in the digital environment. But we're not going to be able to protect them from it. We need to help them embrace it and lean into it. I love your metaphor of eating it up, because ultimately, you were talking about content and context. This is ultimately a screen media diet we are on, and we can eat too much of it, consume too much of it, of a good thing even, or we can consume bad things. So if we think about that as feeding our mind, the way we feed our bodies, we can take better care of ourselves and each other.
That was the perfect ending, Dr. Rich. Thank you so much for your time today. All right, if this episode made you feel a little called out and a little relieved at the same time, girl, same. Because what Dr. Michael Rich just gave us isn't another cut the screens and call it a day lecture. It's a total mindset shift. It's realizing that screens aren't the enemy, but unmanaged, unintentional use in a brain wired for dopamine hits and impulsivity. Phew, yeah, that's where things start to spiral. And what I want you to walk away with is this. You don't need to be perfect. You definitely don't need to overhaul your entire house tonight. And you don't need to carry around that low-grade guilt that somehow this is all on you. What you need is awareness. A few strategic pivots and the willingness to stop fighting your kid and start understanding what their brain is actually up against. Because these platforms, these games, these algorithms, they are not designed with your ADHD child in mind. But you can be. And that's the difference. If this episode hit home, be sure to check out Dr. Rich's work in the show notes. While you're there, send this to another parent who's in the trenches with us. The ones who are hiding in the bathroom Googling, "Is my kid addicted to screens?" while their child melts down in the living room. And if you haven't already, make sure you're following Chaos and Caffeine so you don't miss what's coming next, because we are deep in this screen series and it only gets better from here. That's it for this week on Chaos and Caffeine. I'm Danielle, and I'll see you back next week for the same chaos, more clarity, and hopefully just enough caffeine to survive it all. One thing I've learned about raising a kiddo with ADHD is that the goal isn't just turning screens off. The real magic is finding something that pulls their brain in just as fast. That's what I love about op games. In our house, pulling out a quick game like Flip 7, Tapple, or Blank Slate turns into one of those moments where everyone unexpectedly gathers around the table and stays there. And Cork is pure chaos in the best possible way from the very first roll of the dice. If your family likes a little more strategy mixed in, Hummingbirds is beautiful and engaging too. The best part, most of these games take under 10 minutes to learn, which makes them perfect for a quick family reset when everyone needs a break from screens. Because sometimes the easiest way to step away from screens is giving everyone something way more fun to gather around. You can check them out at theop.games or click the link in the show notes, and you can thank me later.